Hello, and welcome back to Astrology with Arin on Awakening Airwaves. I'm your host and astrologer, Arin, and I'm so glad you're here with me for the March 2026 astrology forecast. Each month, we explore the movements of the planets, the larger stories they're telling, and how these cosmic shifts show up in our lived experience, both personally and collectively. And March is one of those months where the astrology really asks us to pay attention as eclipse season and the spring equinox begin to reveal what's been forming beneath the surface. I'm especially excited about today's episode because I'll be joined by a guest, my friend and colleague, Ryan Hunt. Ryan and I both studied with Adam Ellenboss through the Nightlight Astrology School, where I also continue to serve as a tutor in the Horary Astrology program. Ryan brings a deep integrative approach to astrology, blending modern, evolutionary, and Hellenistic techniques with spiritual insight and practical application. And I'm really looking forward to exploring this month's astrology together. This conversation will be a little looser than usual as we reflect on the major themes unfolding in March, especially the eclipse cycle, the Aries ingress, and what it may feel like as so many planets begin activating new territory. Think of this as an invitation to listen in, reflect, and notice what's already shifting in your own life. And before we dive in, I want to remind you that while I won't be offering rising sign horoscopes as part of this month's forecast, you can always find detailed horoscopes for every new and full moon on my lunar blog. Each post includes rising sign horoscopes, lunar rituals, and my recommended crystal and herb allies. You can read the full blog and book a one-on-one consultation with me at astrologywitharin.com. The link is in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. It truly helps my work reach more people. So take a breath, settle in, and let's begin. Hello. Welcome, Ryan. I'm so excited to have you visit with
Oh,
me
thank
about the
you.
astrology of March.
Yeah, I'm excited too. It's fun to be here.
Well, for my listeners, this is Ryan Hunt, one of my colleagues and friends. We know each other from Nightlight Astrology School. We studied together there and both served in the donation-based reading clinic.
Mhm.
And I still work there as a tutor for the horror astrology program, of course. Ryan, will you tell my listeners? I'm so excited to have you. You're my first ever guest. Will
Oh,
you
love.
tell my listeners, please, a bit more about yourself and what you're up to, where they can find you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I'm, as Aaron said, I've graduated through the Nightlight program. I went through all the levels they've got. I took year three times, I think. And yeah, I would say I'm currently now doing astrology, coaching, psychedelic integration, all that kind of juicy fun stuff. I'm doing all of that full time now. So this is kind of like what I'm doing. I do have a YouTube channel. It's Astrology by Ryan. Most social platforms you can find me at that handle. And I'll give it to you so you can put it in the description. It's just all one word, Astrology by Ryan. And my website for people that want to book readings with me or do take classes. Sometimes I teach classes. I just finished one with Synchronicity University, which you can still buy the classes for individually if you want. It was the 5 cosmic catalysts for your best year yet in 2026. And since we just had the Chinese New Year, it's a
Mhm.
perfect time to dive into all of the cosmic catalysts that can help you with your best year yet. So those are still for sale at Synchronicity University, I think, for at least another month or two. So those are available there. But yeah, go on to my website, ryan-hunt.com. And if you go up in the menu, there's a contact me, I think. And then in that, there's a join my list. And you can just join my mailing list. And I don't send a lot of email, just, usually once or twice a month. And then, but I'll let people know if I've got classes or, sometimes I do like digital publications and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll just announce those there on my
Awesome.
mailing list. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
same. I
welcome.
don't send out a whole lot of emails anymore either. I try to keep about once a month for people who just want to keep up with my work. And Synchronicity University, that is with Nadia Shah,
That's
correct?
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. She's super lovely. I've loved studying from her. I've loved working with her. She's fantastic. So, yeah.
Yeah, she's lovely. I met her at NORWAC 2022, I
Oh,
think.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was just, yeah, she's as lovely in person as she seems on YouTube too, isn't she?
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to talk about the astrology of March with you. It's going
Yeah.
to be an exciting month. I thought before we start, let's catch up a little bit on how is February going for you? We just had the Saturn Neptune conjunction
We
on
did.
February 20th. For our listeners, we're recording on February 22nd under this lovely Venus Jupiter trine. But also with Mercury stationing retrograde in Pisces, we've already experienced a couple of technical
Oh, yeah.
glitches. So thank you to the celestial messenger for that.
Right.
Um, so we're dealing with that, but the Saturn Neptune conjunction, right? Like the biggest news of 2026. So what's
Right.
going on with you? What have you noticed in your personal life, even maybe if you want to share anything corresponding to what's going on with February?
Oh, well, I mean, as you just mentioned, deep into the into the technological snafus, I've been dealing with that actually. It started with the eclipse, all my technology stuff, and it just
Hmm.
like has been escalating ever since. Having, my entire internet went down, then it just struggled and kind of came limping back, but kept dropping off, and finally got all that sorted out yesterday. And yeah, I was still having technical issues with you this morning, so that's big. In terms of Saturn, Neptune. It's a I realize how like monumentous it was. Is like, oh, this is happening right now. But I feel also like it's such a long transit,
Hmm.
and there's such slow moving planets that I feel it's more like they're just kind of like chiseling away, or maybe I'm being sandblasted, and it's like slowly eroding my surfaces to get to what they're trying to get at me with a little bit. Um, yeah, so I with Saturn, Neptune in general, I think about like um kind of um you know compromising, like looking, that's where we're like we have our our own like principles or our own, boundaries or, our own consent walls, right? And through some form or another compromise to those consent boundaries happens, and that can be like either individually or it's collectively. And probably with those two planets we're going to see it really affect us collectively. But as things affect us collectively, the reason why they show up collectively is because they're affecting so many of us individually. I mean, that's what we are, the collective. So yeah, there should be
Right.
enough feeling it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, anytime you have these, it's a 36, 37-year cycle, right? The Saturn Neptune one. So this is a seed planting. We can think of it, any conjunction. I always think the lunar cycle is really easy and an apt comparison. When you have a new moon, that's the conjunction, right? So it's the seed
Right.
planting. You don't
Right.
see anything in the sky. It's literally dark, right?
Right.
You don't see anything until it gets to about the crescent phase, which is about the opening sextile around there.
Yeah.
And then you start recognizing in the moon, oh, she looks like the moon again, right? She's at least got a sliver of light. And I
Hmm.
think, we can look at all cycles in that way, where we often don't see what's being revealed, even maybe the first glimpses of it until a bit later on. Sometimes we get some foreshadowing hints, and that's always fun to try and pay attention to, try and track. And, if you're better at journaling than I am, then to write down and
Hmm.
compare to later as things move on. Myself, I have Libra rising. And so all of the Pisces stuff that's going on in March and, was already started, is in
Mm.
my sixth house. So I have a cold, and I'm going to apologize for that in advance. If I have to stop and cough or blow my nose, or if I sound a little funny, that's why. And I also have had a number of like water issues going on. And I partly credit Neptune because he's been in my sixth for so long and, can
Mm.
create this fog. And then it seems like he
Mhm.
moved out and all of these problems like revealed themselves, sort of.
Mm.
But I also think it's very Piscean because they all involve water. One was a toilet that like basically became detached from the floor. My son was like, Mom, come look at this toilet. And I'm like, what's going on? And he pushes it and it like lifts off the floor. And I'm like, that's not supposed to happen. Put it back, put it back.
Whoa.
Called the plumber. Thankfully, there wasn't like water everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
But called the plumber and he took care of it. But of course, it's certainly not cheap. Plumber is a sixth house
Mm.
person, right? As someone that you
Right.
hire to come do work for you.
Hmm.
And then I turn on my shower. I have a rain shower head, and it literally busted at the seams, and all of the water came pouring. I was like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And so I replaced that. And
Yeah.
then yesterday, I noticed that my counter was wet, pulled out my fridge, and it had been spraying water, like spraying water. There's a
Wow.
bunch of damage back there, and there's mold. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, that's not helping me not be sick either.
Right.
So again, sixth house business, there's always problems to solve in the sixth house. The fridge is a sixth house
Mm.
critter as like my robot slave, kind
Right.
of, right?
Right.
Um, and the people that will inevitably come work on the fridge and the drywall and the cabinetry, they're all sixth house
Right.
people as well. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I definitely know what that Mercury retrograde in Pisces is going to be for me. It's going to be
Yeah.
about that. So,
Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned that, I hadn't even thought about it, but when you mentioned that, it made me remember that just a few days ago, I guess it was more than a few days. It was like last weekend, so it was right around the time where we were talking about where things are starting to happen. But um, I had to replace the hot tub water like completely. Like in those, that's something you just do like a few times a year, right? But it was like
right.
all the chemicals had gotten out of whack. I couldn't get the chemicals into balance, and I mean, it was just like I just had to give up and surrender and like
Mhm.
pump out all of the water from the hot tub and refill it again. Like totally,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That matches
very
perfectly.
water heavy.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
my issues started last weekend also.
Hmm.
That's the toilet was the first one, which was like
Oh, fun.
last
Hmm.
Saturday, Friday, Saturday, and then the shower was, I think, Thursday, and then the fridge
And just
yesterday.
before that, my sink had clogged. You're reminding me of all this stuff. My bathroom sink had clogged. I had to go get the roto rooter, the liquid plumber stuff to unclog my sink, my bathroom sink.
Yeah.
The bathroom is definitely a sixth house location inside a house,
Yeah. These
for
things are
sure.
all very like astrologer good, right? Like they're
I know.
they're like the unpleasantries of life, but
Right.
it I don't know, it helps a little bit, I would say, like when you can see the astrology in action, it's like, wow, that's, impressive, even if it's
Mm.
difficult for me in the moment. And the beauty of astrology is that you can say, hey, this is not permanent, as all things in this material plane. And
So
this
true.
time will end.
So
And this
true.
is, a period that I have to ride through, be tested,
Right.
overcome. My mom is I come from a long line of domestic goddesses and precognitive dreamers and
Uh-huh.
etc. And she is a little bit superstitious. She's Sagittarius rising. Aren't you Sagittarius rising
I
as well?
am Sag
Yeah.
rising. Oh, your mom and I, Sag
Yeah.
rising. Good. What's the
Yeah.
story with her? Let's hear
Well,
it.
she said to me, when the toilet thing happened, she was like, oh no. And then the shower thing, and she was like, you have one more. These things come in threes.
Oh,
And I
right.
I was like, I don't know, Mom. But then there's the fridge. And I was like, this is like a final boss level, like number three. This is like the big one.
The big
Save the
one.
big one for last. But I'm
Wow.
like, oh my goodness. So yes,
Isn't
I
that
see
wild how
some
like
business.
that, like, I mean, there's a reason why we have the saying things come in threes.
Hmm.
Like it's wild how like that happens. Like I
Yeah,
mean, like why? Why did the saying come to be? And like why does it kind of like fit so many of the circumstances we have in life?
I don't know, but I really do feel like yeah, that's sort of the end of that. And then the rest of this Pisces business will be me working
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
the repercussions to get everything back in order. So, not
Wow.
really looking forward to it, but that is the task ahead of me for March.
Right.
Um, and we will each have our own tasks to deal with, I have no doubt. All right, so I will go ahead and share the chart so we
Oh,
can
let's
look at
look at
it
the chart.
together.
See it.
So there we are on March 1st, and we have Mercury as retrograde here in
Hmm.
Pisces
Hmm.
in March 1st. But really, the first thing that I think that happens this month, and I guess maybe I should ask you before we jump into individual transits, Ryan, do you have
Hmm.
any like overarching words or foreshadowing advice for us?
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about specifically for today, because we were recording today, is um, at least like right now and for the next few hours, you talked about this trine. I think you mentioned it between Venus and Jupiter that's going on right now, right?
Mhm.
But we also have, because you wanted to talk a little bit about it, I think today, the idea of translation of light. So right now
Mhm.
we have the moon translating light between Venus and Jupiter in a sextile between both of them. She's in superior sextile to Jupiter. And
Mhm.
so there's this kind of like she's like, creating this um sextile bisection between Venus and Jupiter, which is such a benefic aspect in my mind, because they're all in their exaltation right now, and the moon is
Mhm.
translating light between them. And so I think it's just like yes, we were talking about all these snafus that are going wrong, but this is like if we think of, because we just had the Chinese New Year, right? This is
Mhm.
a powerful moment of like benefic activation that we're all experiencing like right now as we're recording this. And so I think it's just
Mhm.
really nice to remember that these planets, they have that we're connected to them through this kind of like really magnificent experience that's going right now, and as an omen for the future, as an omen for the year to come, something we can say, wow, the start of the Chinese New Year is filled with this really powerful, benefic translation of light experience that's going on. So, anyways, I just
Mhm.
thought that was kind of like really fun to recognize for right now.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, we didn't, I think when we scheduled this, I certainly wasn't, I was looking at my calendar and not at the chart, frankly,
Yeah.
because my schedule is tight.
Yeah.
So it just kind of happened
Yeah.
that we scheduled it under this aspect. And when I noticed that, I was like, oh, that's lovely. That's like a lovely
Right.
connective,
Right.
to sit and have a nice conversation with somebody. So,
Totally.
I think that that's beautiful for us. But I totally agree with you. Like the Lunar New Year is always the first new moon in
Yeah.
February. It's
Yeah.
not always an eclipse. It certainly
No.
was
Yeah.
this year.
Right.
So that gives a bit of a potent start to things
Hmm.
to begin with. I also think it's interesting, like you said, this trine combined with the sextile aspect is what is the same sort of set of aspects that we're going to be seeing later in the year between
Hmm.
Saturn, Neptune, um, Uranus once he gets into Gemini, and
Hmm.
Pluto here in Aquarius.
Hmm.
But right now we're experiencing this in water and earth, and
Hmm.
later it will be in air and fire.
Hmm.
So perhaps this is a gentle, it doesn't feel so gentle to me at the moment. It's too sixth house for me, but uh, hopefully for others, it's a bit more gentle introduction
Yeah.
to the year that I think will pick up steam
Yeah.
as we move further into the year.
Yeah.
Agreed. But I do think that one of the sort of overarching or one of the most interesting things happening in February, or sorry, March,
Hmm.
um, is that the faster moving planets, less
Hmm.
so Mercury because he's going to station retrograde,
Right.
more so Venus and the Sun, at least in
Yeah.
March, and Mars will
Yeah,
follow eventually.
Mercury, I don't think makes it in March. Mercury comes on later when he transits across them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they have, and the moon or the sun has not quite yet trine Jupiter, but they're trining Jupiter from Pisces, heading
Yep.
into Aries to conjoin Saturn Neptune here.
Yep.
And then we'll pretty immediately sextile Pluto.
Yeah.
So we've had in February,
Hmm.
we had Saturn come into Aries here, join Neptune, and conjoin him. And like we talked about, it's kind of hard to say exactly, there's dissolution of boundaries, potentially going to be some refirming up of boundaries.
Mm.
Um, there's been some shattering of some illusions.
Hmm.
There's been some dissolving of structures we thought were stable. And I think we can all see some of that going on around us.
Yeah.
But I think as the faster moving planets are activating them,
Hmm.
we're likely to find out even more, don't you think?
I do, and I think that, what's going to be powerful about those faster moving planets, connecting with them is, you know, for the slower moving planets, we do tend to see we're able to step back and see the collective experience of those. But when the faster moving planets hit, we'll see those activating by our natal house placements, right? And so that's where like our own personal stories are going to start emerging about this, Saturn, Neptune, what it's going to be for this year, because that the actual activation will happen in different houses, and those planets
Hmm.
are going to be ruling different houses for different people. So everybody's going to start having a slightly different story and a variation. As the faster the planet goes, the more personal the story becomes. But collectively, we're all going to be kind of like tying that back to this Saturn Neptune experience all year long. Yeah.
Hmm. Yep, absolutely, 100% agree. All
Yeah.
right.
And we are seeing, illusions and the disillusionment of things, in just the broad world. It's in the zeitgeist,
Yeah,
things
there's
that
a
are
struggle of like what's real, what's not real. Are we
what's
all
real, what's
living in
not,
the same reality?
right?
Cognitive
Because like
dissonance all over the place. Yeah.
right, you go meet up with a long lost friend or one of your family members you don't see very much, and you sneak a peek over at your siblings' uh, social media stream, and it doesn't look anything like yours, right? And
Hmm.
you're like, wait a
Yeah,
second, what world do you live in?
right. And you're
Right?
like, wait, all these, is my reality manufactured? What is real? You
Right?
know? Yeah, very Saturn, Neptune. So for
Yeah.
sure, I think we're seeing that bit already on a,
Hmm.
on the sort of nebulous grander scale. But yeah, as we get into Aries season, things will get interesting and more personal. Probably that's
Hmm.
the nature of Aries too, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, March is the time when the sun moves into Aries, right? So when you're
Right.
talking about March, so the sun's going to be moving into Aries, and that is such a powerful moment in time for the whole world.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I know that the southern hemisphere, is opposite in terms of seasonality, but equinoxes in general, I think are powerful moments,
Hmm.
wherever you're at, just because it's the shifting of balance from one extreme to the next. We finally reach that point where the light is in equilibrium and it's about to start tipping in the other direction, whether it's growing or shrinking,
Hmm.
depending on your hemisphere. But yeah, so the sun moving into Aries in the middle of March is going to be a big time for all of us, especially with Saturn and Neptune there. It's kind of like it's going to be the moment where the sun starts to says, "Hey, I'm joining this party too, and I'm like activating Aries and I'm lighting it up. So let's just have a party, a planetary party."
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, the first thing happening in March, speaking of Aries, the ruler of Aries, Mars, is changing signs on, I think, March 2nd. He goes in
Mm-hmm.
to Pisces. So I don't ever really mind. Well, no, I don't usually. I guess Mars finds his joy in the sixth house, and that's where Pisces is for me. I don't
Hmm.
mind Mars in Pisces. He's got a bit of triplicity, dignity
Yeah.
there. He can be somewhat emotional and, have us acting from places
Hmm.
of emotion, which can be constructive or less so, depending on how we go about it. But I think if we go about it consciously and with awareness, that it
Mm.
can be quite functional.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, one of the ways I think about Mars and Pisces, it's not just about bringing the emotion, but really, I think we all experience emotion so deeply within our bodies and in our consciousness, and we ignore it most of the time. But when Mars comes into Pisces, it's a time when he's like saying, I'm showing you all this emotion that's down there that you're just not recognizing. And so that's why we think it's
good
like
point.
there's so much emotion, is because Mars is like cutting through all of the noise and saying, look, you got to actually pay attention to this if you want to heal through any of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's probably a really good time to listen to our bodies and our intuition.
totally.
It's
Totally.
also perhaps worth noting that Mars is slowly, maybe not quite yet, but within the next few days, becoming visible again as he gets far enough away from the sun, as the sun
Oh
moves
yeah, he's
on.
gonna love that. Yeah.
So that will bring some strength,
Yeah.
right? Right before Aries season really starts, and he'll be reborn as a
Right.
morning star in the sky.
Hmm.
So, yeah, within the first, I'd
Yeah, and
say,
I'm not
week of
sure.
March. Oh, go ahead.
Have you tracked his declination? I was just saying, have you tracked his declination? Do you know? I know like we have a traditional like rule of thumb in terms of like 15 degrees away from the sun, but
Mhm.
sometimes, it goes one way or the other just because of the actual like declination or the seasonal fluctuations. Have you tracked at all
Right.
whether when Mars is going to become visible?
I haven't.
Okay.
And people
It's going to
should
be around then
also note,
anyways. Yeah.
yeah, that it'll depend on your location too, how much, light pollution,
Right.
air pollution, how busy your horizon is, and all those things. But if you wanted
Yeah.
to see Mars as a morning star, I would say, probably around here within, like I said, the first 10 days of March. If you get up
Yeah.
early before the
Yep.
sun,
Yep.
that's when you're going to see him.
Yep. And definitely by the solstice. I mean, by the equinox, right? Uh, like if somebody wanted to like, as they were tracking like any kind of equinoctial celebrations or morning celebrations they might be doing, Mars will be a morning star by then. They'll be able to like
Hmm.
celebrate Mars in the morning, at the
Hmm.
equinox.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Strikes me too, like, I don't know, good things to do during this time. If like for physical activity, anything water related, obviously swimming.
Mm-hmm.
Pisces also rules the feet. So if you're thinking about starting like a martial arts practice or something like that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pretty, pretty excellent time to do something like that.
Yeah. Especially since you're bringing it up, what popped into my head was a soft style martial art, right? If you wanted to start, you know, uh, kung fu or tai chi or something like that, right?
Or qigong, yeah.
Yeah, as
Hmm.
opposed to karate or any of the harder styles, like aikido. Um, yeah, softer styles would be really good to start. Or if you already have a practice in those, it's making me think I'm a Tai Chi practicer and I've been thinking for a long time, oh, I need to get back and do my Tai Chi. And now that we're talking about it, like this is a perfect time for me to like reinvigorate that practice. So maybe I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it probably is a really good time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, pretty immediately after that, March 3rd, we have our second of two eclipses for this season. So we mentioned we had that solar eclipse in Aquarius, February 17th.
Hmm.
And then this is the full moon version. So, or
Hmm.
the full moon eclipse, which is a lunar eclipse then,
Yeah.
South Node lunar eclipse at 12 Virgo.
Yeah.
What do you think about this one, Ryan?
Well, I think of them as a pair, right? I mean, I know that the solar eclipse was in Aquarius, but it was only barely in Aquarius, and it was actually an out of sign eclipse because the nodes were still in the Pisces Virgo axis,
Hmm.
which is where we're coming up with this now. So I kind of like definitely think of like the solar and the lunar eclipses as like, I know that like from a Saros cycle, they're longer cycle, but if we just look like what we can think about with our small scale, lives, they do kind of represent, what we might want to think about at the starting of our things. But I think for like this 2 week period, right, as we move then into the lunar eclipse, it's kind of um like this birthing moment where the moon is full, and being in Virgo, the moon really is embodying a, a kind of like a strong physical demand for bodily autonomy. Virgo is the most autonomous sign. The
Hmm.
archetype of the Virgin is about sovereignty and autonomy, and empowerment from within, within ourselves, and from a feminine aspect, right? So
Mhm.
even men, male-bodied people, uh, can still recognize this feminine sovereignty that is rising within them, especially in a world that is so hell-bent on, covering those kinds of, more divine feminine aspects up. So I think it's definitely a good time for us to remember that this is a strong power within all of us that can really start coming out and emerging. And it's a good time to like set our minds about, our inner world, and, maybe do some deep meditation on this day and some spiritual practice. And, you know, whatever a person's practice is, this is a powerful eclipse and a powerful full moon for sure.
Yeah. I feel like it is very spiritual. The South Node, um, K2 in and of himself can
Hmm.
be a deeply spiritual sort of, he always reminds me of the Buddhist definition of like emptiness, right? He's a vessel, he's an empty vessel.
Mm.
K2 is.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and of course, with the ruler of the eclipse being Mercury, he's retrograde in his fall in Pisces,
Mm.
opposite.
Hmm.
This is not a
Hmm.
time for clarity. If you're expecting like to be very clear and make very like cerebral decisions at this time, I'm
Right.
afraid you will probably be disappointed. So I really think this
Yeah.
is going to be a time for surrender, frankly. I would watch for tendencies towards overfunctioning, martyrdom, over
Yeah.
serving
Yeah.
without boundaries. If you have a
Mm.
tendency towards over giving in these ways and lacking
Yeah.
boundaries,
Right.
this may
We
be a
don't need
sort
to
of
give our
check for
sovereignty
you.
away. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak up over
No,
you.
yeah, no, you're right. Yep.
Yeah.
It does tie back to the sovereignty of Virgo
Yeah.
there. So those are definitely things to watch for. But with this, Mercury in this watery Pisces as like the ocean of oneness, and then retrograde turned
Hmm.
inward, it does feel very spiritual. I think that's the constructive side of it, potentially, to spend this
Mm.
time, like you said, in meditation, in
Yeah.
spiritual practice,
Yeah.
in inner reflection.
Yeah. Well, the image that I wrote a piece on my Substack, that was kind of based off of, I think it was giving a teaching or something, but the image was with Mercury and Pisces. The tendency is to try to push Mercury to tread water, right? But what we really need to do is find a way to let our own inner Mercuries just lay back, float, and watch the blue sky above, because we keep
Mhm.
trying to push Mercury harder and harder. And, in Pisces, he's not going to go anywhere. He's just going to like,
Right.
tread water faster and faster in the same spot, and eventually, get tired, go under. Obviously, the planets don't drown, but it's like, just give him a break, let him just relax and chill out for a little bit in
Yeah.
Pisces.
It's time to back float, not tread water, back
Exactly,
float,
right?
right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think surrender is definitely key here. Like Venus exalted co-present, she's
Hmm.
trying to help
Absolutely.
um matters a bit here. And I
Mm.
think it could be a highly emotional time. And then depending on which houses they are for individuals, this is my 6/12th axis. So I'm
Mhm.
very much thinking about my tendency to overfunction and overgive and
Mm.
take on
Mhm.
other people's responsibilities,
Mm.
confusing them for my own. other
Mhm.
people's emotions, confusing them for my own, and things
Mm.
like that. So if you're a Libra rising, watch yourself for such things. Maybe Pisces risings are going to be seeing these sort of themes come up for evaluation as well.
Yeah.
But I think, during eclipses, they're not really a time to act decisively. I always think that the best use of eclipse season, I always recommend salt baths like during the eclipse if you can,
Mm. Mhm.
or a salt scrub in the shower. Get yourself sort
Mhm.
of energetically clean as well as physically clean. And
Absolutely.
then more listen than anything else. Mercury in Pisces is sonar.
Mm.
Um, so just sit back and listen and see what happens and turn inward and see what you feel pulled towards.
Yeah.
And then give it some time before you actually act on that. Once we get into Aries season, there is plenty of time for action, I think, don't you?
Totally. And I like that idea of, cleaning that you brought up because in the Buddhist cosmology, eclipses are activation points where our karmic actions are magnified by they all have different magnification numbers, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million times, right? Depending upon the quality of the eclipse. And so if we take a time to salt bathe and clean ourselves and, work on some of these more purification processes, that is going to have really long-term, implications or impact, for, how your own karmic bodies are being represented in this world. So it's a really good time to take, proactive, intentional action towards cleaning, purification, yeah, all of that
Hmm.
stuff. Totally,
Hmm.
totally love you on that. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I would focus on the self for the most part, but like if you have to do something, clean your
Mm.
house. Virgo loves that, you
Virgo
know?
loves that. Totally. Yeah.
So
I've
yeah,
got
I
Sun
think
in
that's a
Virgo in
great
my
time for
10th
this.
house.
Do you?
Yeah, cleaning is so therapeutic.
I have Jupiter and Saturn in Virgo in my 12th. And yeah, I love being left alone to clean my house. I don't mind that
Yeah,
at all.
right.
So that might be a great time. And like you mentioned, 2026 is interesting with the eclipses because we see both of the solar eclipses on the Aquarius Leo axis out of sign from,
Mhm,
well, actually, once we get to July, it will
mhm,
be the nodes will have changed signs. But both of
mhm,
the lunar eclipses still on the Pisces Virgo axis. We have
mhm.
this one, and then in the summer, we'll have our last eclipse in Pisces, also lunar, and then we have
Yep.
one more February of 2027 in Virgo in
Yeah.
yeah, in Virgo, and
Yeah.
that'll be our last eclipse for
Yeah.
this cycle on this axis.
Yeah.
So we're almost done. If these have been
Mm.
rough for anybody out there, they've not been great for me. Yeah, 12th house, I feel worn down. I've been feeling worn down during these eclipses. So good time
Mm.
to rest, and know that we're almost finished with them.
Yes, we are almost finished with them.
And yeah, but I don't ever really see, do you, eclipse season as being really finished until the next non-eclipse lunation?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I mean, I feel like they go within cycles, right? And where they're deeper impact and lower impact, like the tides, how the tides move in and out. And sometimes they're at the low tide, but even when they're not quite at the low tide, sometimes the water goes out before it surges back in a little bit. So yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, it's definitely like that, So I mean, it's lunar in that way, right? I mean,
Yeah,
the effect of the eclipse is so moon powered that I think it has nothing but to be tide oriented in the way that it works with us. So
yeah.
yeah, I think the next lunation is definitely a strong low point in the tide. Um, I've just been doing some research onto the longer cycles of the lunation cycle with the sun. And the lowest point comes every 33 years, where I guess every 33 years we have a year where we can have 7 eclipses in the year, which is the maximum number of eclipses we can have in a year. I don't know exactly where we are in that cycle right now, but yeah, it's like where
Wow.
the
Seven.
the
Okay.
difference between phasal relationship of the moon's you know lunar year and the sun's solar year come into the closest point of contact. Yeah. So yeah, big
Interesting.
cycles within cycles within cycles, tides within tides within tides. Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of what we do as astrologers, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, seven seems like so many for 1 year. I guess for our listeners, like four would probably be like the norm because you have two eclipse seasons per year and
Hmm.
generally a solar and lunar pair. But sometimes you'll get three.
Hmm.
Um, and the two on either side will be sort of weaker, and
Hmm.
the one in the middle really potent. So if you do that both seasons, that's six. But then I suppose if the eclipse season is close enough to the beginning or the end of the year, is that how you get seven?
Yeah, I mean, I've just started doing some research
Okay.
into it over the last like week or so because I've just become so fascinated with it. So I
I'm
haven't like
fascinated too.
I
Yeah.
haven't like done the math on the seven eclipses yet, but the math that I've been doing, I've been like calculating like 3 billion years of time. My spreadsheets, like as my Virgo,
Your spreadsheets.
Mercury and Virgo in my 10th house, right?
I love it. I love it. I'm such a nerd. Yeah, I think you kind of have to be an astrologer. You have to love books and yeah, cycles within cycles.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
fabulous. You'll have to
totally.
update me when you get further into that research because I think that's
Right.
super
Yeah,
interesting. I'm an
it
eclipse
is.
baby myself, so
Mm,
um yeah, so
very
they're
cool.
yeah, they fascinate me. But I feel
Yeah.
like the 2 weeks after the eclipse, before the next lunation is um well, my other teacher, Austin Coppock, would call it a Bardo period.
Mm.
It's a liminal space, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes strange
Hmm.
things happen, things disappear, things come in.
Mm.
Um, so I think again, and just even in the next 2 weeks of March until the new moon in Pisces, it's a good time to give ourselves a break and not try and
Hmm.
push ourselves too hard. Um, and to address things as they come up versus like making a lot of big action steps towards what's coming. Maybe it's a good time to reflect and plan. Virgo loves to
Mm.
plan too,
Mm.
more than take a lot of action and save that for Aries season.
Yeah. Especially people with moon in Virgo and the moon being in Virgo. Yeah, it's a good planning time. Moon
Hmm.
Virgo placements are plan oriented. I mean, Virgo in general is too. Yeah, you're right. I
Hmm.
mean, Sun in Virgo does too, but moon loves to um Mengerus is the Indonesian word to organize, yeah, to plan, to create, agendas and, like get,
Hmm.
things in order. Yeah, very lunar
Hmm.
expression of Virgo. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so the next day, March 4th, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
have Venus sextile Uranus,
Mm-hmm.
which could shake things up a little bit, but the sextile is nice. It's of the nature of Venus, right? She's
Totally.
exalted,
Yeah.
and she also rules Taurus. So
Mm-hmm.
she's in very good shape.
She's in good shape and she's given a good pat on the back to Uranus, giving him a good send off for him to leave her house. Oh,
Yeah.
Uranus, you've done such a good job over the last 7 years. Why don't you go on into Gemini and help Mercury out?
Well, as a side note, I don't know if you noticed this, Ryan, but when we had Uranus go into Gemini to sort of dip his toe
Mm-hmm.
last spring,
Mm-hmm.
she went with him
Mm.
across the border and she's
Oh,
going to
I
do it
wasn't thinking
again.
that. Oh, lovely. That's
So I
wonderful. I
think that's
wasn't
really
tracking that.
interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I don't know that it's going to make Uranus not stir things up in Gemini. Like nobody's going to do that. But it is a sweet little send off, I
Yeah,
think.
it's kind of like, it's like I kind of like feel it's like the old adage where like, when somebody's stirring stuff up for you and causing problems, kind of like just don't stir it back. Just kind of like be nice and, oh,
Right.
you're so good. Thanks for coming. Come again in 25 years,
Yeah.
like, and I kind of like feel like that's what she's doing to Uranus. Like, instead of like riling him up, she's like saying, "Oh, you're so good, Uranus. Thank you for all the disruption you've given
Yep.
to me in my
Thanks for the
sign.
good trouble. Yeah.
Thanks for the good trouble. Go on and help my sibling Mercury now.
Right.
He needs a little bit of your juice."
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think here in this under this sextile, this is the closing sextile
Mm,
because Venus moves faster than Uranus, of course. So
mm, mm-hmm,
she'll catch him up next month.
mm-hmm,
But with her so powerful and sort of in charge of this aspect, I think this is a great time if you have a sweet surprise for somebody. If you want to tell somebody you have a crush on them or something, that's a great time.
yeah.
Um, or for art. Lovely for
Or
art, I
for
think.
art. Yeah. Or anything sense oriented, food,
Hmm.
aromatics, anything sense oriented is really, really powerful for creation as well as just simply enjoying
Hmm.
it, Yeah, sound,
Hmm.
any of the sense of sound, smell, taste, touch, everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Treat yourself, right?
Treat yourself.
That's what Venus always
Totally.
wants us to do.
Yeah.
I have a Taurus rising bestie, and she says that all the time. You treat yourself.
And suddenly, like suddenly decide to go to the spa on that day.
Right.
Take the day off and like just like
Do
give
something
yourself
you
something
never do.
unexpected, right?
Yep,
Yeah, totally.
exactly.
Yeah.
You deserve it. That's what
You
Venus would
deserve it.
say.
Absolutely.
I might have to keep that in mind. I might need it by this time.
Yeah, I think we all will.
Okay, next day, March
But then the
5th.
Mercury part wants to plan it out, right? Oh,
Oh,
I'm
I
going to
know.
plan it out, right?
I
I'm going to
know.
plan it out for that day.
Like, no, wait
And
and
then it's
see
no
what
longer
happens.
spontaneous and something else happens in its place.
Right. Yeah, best laid plans may go astray during this time in general with Mercury
Right.
retrograde in Pisces, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, especially around that time, you might have better luck of being a bit more spontaneous.
Right.
But the very next day, then we have the sun.
Hmm.
He will be at 15
Hmm.
here on March 5th, trining a retrograde but exalted Jupiter
Oh
in
yeah.
Cancer.
Oh yeah.
So this is lovely. And one of the things we know that the sun trine Jupiter signifies, especially this closing trine, again, the
Hmm.
sun moves faster than Jupiter, is that Jupiter will soon station direct. And we love
Mm.
that.
Hmm.
So that's what that makes me think anytime I
Hmm.
see this closing trine.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it could also be some emotional reassurance or support, some meaning making and emotional wisdom,
Hmm.
faith restored if that's been lost
Yeah.
through some recent transits. What else do
Yeah.
you think? I mean, Jupiter rules Pisces, which is where the
The
sun
sun is.
is. So we
And he
have some
rules the
reception here.
trine,
Hmm.
right? Just like Venus rules the sextile, Jupiter
Right?
rules the trine,
Jupiter
right? So
rules
this
the
is a
trine.
this is a very good Jupiterian aspect between the sun and Jupiter. And that's where for the listeners that don't necessarily know, the reason why Jupiter rules the trine is because of the thema mundi positioning of Jupiter as a trine relationship to the sun, right? And to the moon. So it's a really
Mhm. Mhm.
powerful connection right now. Yeah. Um, yeah, I just think, along with the idea of Jupiter being the archetype of the teacher, this is a really strong time for us to connect to our own personal inner teachers, like our how we learn to be the best of who we are. This is a good time for that. Jupiter's kind of like
Mm.
saying, "Hey, the sun's in my sign. I'm exalted. We got this good trine going on. This is some good stuff happening." And because it's all water element related, it's about what's going on deep internally for us, our deep inner emotions, our inner wisdom, and how do we use our inner wisdom to connect with others in a way that helps to bring their inner wisdom out. And, we can just have this big giant festival of
Hmm.
being wise beings on the planet,
Yeah.
helping, as Ram Dass says, helping each other walking each other home,
Walking each
right?
other home.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, yeah. the combination of these 2 days, one right
Mm,
after another,
mhm.
it does look quite emotional. There could be some emotional outpourings or
Yeah.
emotional conversations.
Mhm.
But overall, I think it does. It looks quite supportive. So, I mean, I guess I would not shy away from it, if that's
Yeah.
what's coming up for you during this time.
Right.
If people are coming at you with emotional conversations, it's
Mhm.
a good time to go ahead and engage in them because it might
Totally.
actually, like, you might get more support than what you
Right.
initially expect.
Right. Because as we talked about earlier, with Mars being there, it's a time for bringing clarity to those emotions and like,
Hmm.
separating those out and, pulling them apart and being able to look at them with a little bit more distance.
Yeah. With Neptune here, I think things are still so fuzzy, but we will get clarity and, more and more, I think, as we move through the year.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Well, the next day, Venus leaves her exaltation of Pisces and enters Aries,
Mm,
the spring equinox point. Of course, she's in her
mhm,
detriment
mhm,
here,
mhm,
and starts to approach Neptune and, of course, Saturn, but she'll hit Neptune first.
mhm.
What do you think about that, Ryan? She'll
Yeah,
conjoin Neptune actually the same day, March 7th.
yeah, I think that it's a time to like be careful with ourselves. This is an evening star Venus, which is, expressing the deeper levels of her femininity, right? Um, and Aries is a very masculine sign, so it's kind of like by phasal relationship, she's kind of a little bit, you know, agitated, and I think it's just a time for us to like not get too worked up over, some of the, you know, stuff that's going to come to like impact us. I mean, we might start seeing, if we pay attention to the news cycles, we might start seeing a lot of news that's stirring us up, especially, as it comes related to these themes. Or in our lives, if we're working, at work, we might see, stuff start, really itching us and making us feel agitated, because of all the heat of Aries and this
Hmm.
morning star Venus, kind of like in orthogonal kind of positions, or, conceptually orthogonal to each other. But yeah, I think it's just a time to like step back, don't let that stuff take a hold of you. And, we can find Aries is a sign of action. And so I don't think it's about like being inactive, but I think it's about um, stepping away from the irritation long enough to understand what it is and how to take action on it appropriately. Because if we're not careful about that, Venus being in her detriment is going to cause us to like have all these like passionate responses, which may be a little, I mean, they're probably like right on, but they
They're
might
probably
be
warranted.
more right. They might be a little bit more effective if they're less,
Hmm.
explosive,
Right, right. Sometimes it's totally reasonable to want to scream your head off, but is it
right?
helpful?
Right, exactly.
Like, so these might be things to ask yourself
Yeah.
during this time. Um, yeah, I think Venus with Neptune can be very idealistic. She
Mm.
can over romanticize here, and
Mhm.
she's outside of her comfort zone and not well resourced. So if
Totally.
this is showing up in a romantic situation for you, um, tread carefully, and try and go slowly. It's going to be hard in Aries.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
interesting to me, on the same day we have the Venus or the Mercury cazimi in
Mhm.
his fall, is a
Mhm.
retrograde cazimi with the sun. So it
Mhm.
implies some sort of inner clarity,
Mm.
at least, getting
Mhm.
maybe incremental clarity. And as Venus then conjoins Saturn the next day,
Yeah.
um, even more clarity. But it could be emotional,
Mhm.
you know, and then the moon in her fall in Scorpio at the same time sort of doubles down on that being an emotionally turbulent and potentially difficult time. She's also squaring Pluto.
Yeah. I mean, it's
And
it's a time when Venus has a hard time balancing the scales. Like she has a hard time finding
yes.
that equilibrium, finding that, okay, everything's okay, things are working out. Like they can feel totally imbalanced, the scales at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Venus, yeah, she rules the opposite sign of
Mm-hmm.
Libra, right? Where she
Mm-hmm.
wants to balance things and
Mm-hmm.
where she's concerned with the other. So I think what might be happening here too is confusion around, or maybe inner division around my needs versus the other's needs.
Mm-hmm.
How much I give to a situation, which is quite Piscean,
Mm-hmm.
quite Cancerian, how much I give to a person or a situation or
Mm-hmm.
a group of people versus, yeah, is it balancing the scales? Is there reciprocity here?
Right.
Are my needs being addressed as well?
Mm-hmm.
And how uncomfortable that might be, and potential power imbalances or power
Mm-hmm.
struggles
Mm-hmm.
that could result from that.
Mm-hmm.
Venus, Saturn, in a general sense, um, it can be it can be good and bad. It can be a commitment, frankly. Venus,
Mm-hmm.
Saturn is contractual,
Mm-hmm.
potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Both business or personal relationships could culminate in some sort of commitment. But
Mm.
you may be asked to make these decisions about committing without a whole lot of clarity.
Right.
Sometimes that's how life works, though, is that you have to
Mm-hmm.
commit and say, this is what I'm going to go forward with, even though I am not yet sure that it's going to work,
Mm.
or exactly how I'm going to manage the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be
Totally.
asked to like put our heart and invest into something, um, and show up for something that feels unsolid
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah. I think, mentioning Venus and Saturn, one of the things that I think is interesting about the relationship between Venus and Saturn is that when you look at the signs that they rule and their relationship to each other, Venus's air sign is in a trine with Saturn's air sign, and Venus's earth sign is in a trine with Saturn's earth sign, which means that which is good, but it means
Mhm,
that they're also square. Like, so her air sign is square to Saturn's earth sign, and her earth is square to Saturn's air sign. So there's this like, flow on some level, but also this kind of like real tension and like struggle between the two of them. And, Saturn's exaltation is in Libra, which is
mhm,
Venus's domicile. So there's
mhm,
there's definitely like this like I wouldn't say a love-hate relationship, but there's a very push-pull tension between them where at sometimes it can be the sense of flowing ease between them, and they love balance and harmony, right? They love, expressing things gracefully and or in, ways that are organized and, that have a way of moving into the world with some sort of sense of ease and balance. They both love that kind of expression of things. But yeah, there's this tension where, when Venus wants to be moving quickly, Saturn can just be like, no, we're like
mhm,
sticking to the rules here, or
mhm.
when Venus wants to really be embodying her sensual self, Saturn can be like, you're too much into that stuff. We need to
Right.
step back a little bit, So it's like they
Yeah.
do have that kind of like tension between them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it can really kind of go either way because they can
Mm,
agree on, like you said, justice, fairness, commitment,
mhm,
reciprocity.
mhm,
But Venus is going treat yourself, and
mhm.
Saturn is like, no, we must be austere. We
Right.
must be sober. We must be serious. We must save and plan for the future.
Right.
And Venus wants to, you know, be the glue that brings people together, and she's
Mhm,
moist and cool, and Saturn is
mhm,
dry and
mhm,
and
mhm,
serious. And I think here in Aries, where Saturn is in his fall and
mhm,
Venus is in her detriment,
mhm,
versus, yes, the opposite sign of Libra, where
mhm,
Saturn is in his exaltation and Venus
mhm,
is in her domicile.
mhm.
um there, it's harder to get a really good result right now.
Hmm.
But I think it's worth noting that
Hmm.
this is still the beginning of things. Um, this is still the seed planting with the Saturn Neptune conjunction, and that's what she's doing is really translating the light between the two.
Yeah.
Um, and so bringing our personal attention, our relational attention to what Saturn and Neptune are going to bring in our lives. So it's important to remember that's a 36-year cycle or whatnot. So
Right.
just because things start out, maybe a bit bumpy or in ways that require our courage,
Mm.
um, that doesn't mean that it's not going to end well, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, what's going on with all these eclipses that we're having and, the ingress of Neptune and Saturn into Aries, that the seeds that are getting planted and the things that are starting, the rockiness is about the things that are ending. And that's kind of like, the final touches of that double-bodied nature in Pisces. But as we move into Aries, the seeds that are getting planted, we could think of symbolically the eclipses represent things that are kind of unknown and unseen, and the starting degrees, like it's like, you know, uh, like in pregnancy, right? Like the baby is already starting to grow inside. We don't see the baby yet, right? And that's like what's happening in here, right? It's like an unseen kind of start to things. And it
Hmm.
is a long cycle. We're talking about many, many years, decades for things to start to ripen. And I think that's really, kind of tying back to the intentionality of the eclipses. Really just plant your intentions now about things. And even if you don't see how they're going to manifest and bear fruit for a long time, planting good, solid intentions to connect with our own inner beings of divinity and wisdom is always a good time, but especially right now. And these inceptional
Yeah.
moments at the beginning of Aries is saying, hey, you got a long time for this stuff to ripen and mature. Make sure you point your arrow in the right direction.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Ryan. I think that is. I think this is a time to be inspired and
Mm,
develop a vision, a sort of quickening, to use your pregnancy metaphor of the
mhm,
vision,
mhm,
where you can sort of feel it begin to stir inside
mm,
of you. Um,
mhm,
More so for that than for the logistics of
mm.
how this is actually going to be built.
Right. Totally.
Agreed. And so let's see, the same day as Venus conjoins Saturn, which is March
Mhm,
8th, then we get Mercury retrograde in his fallen Pisces,
mhm,
trining Jupiter retrograde in his exaltation
mhm,
in Cancer. So
mhm,
if we layer that into the other things going on here,
mhm,
I think it gives, again, some emotional and relational
mm.
support. So if you do come to some sort of commitment or agreement here, may still be a bit confusing. Um, but
Well,
there's
it's okay
support
to
for it.
cry, right? This is like these that aspect with Mercury and Pisces, in a trine with Jupiter. Like it's okay that the tears just start streaming down our faces, right? Like it's okay. Like this is the time to do it.
Yeah, it reminds me. I had a glimpse in my mind of do you know the movie The Big Lebowski? It's one of my
Yeah. Uh-huh.
favorites. And
Uh,
the other Lebowski, the wealthy one, I think he goes, strong men also cry. Just
right.
totally got that
Totally.
flash from that
Yeah.
scene in my mind. It's like, yep,
Yeah.
Mars is here too, ruling
Right.
this Aries business.
Yeah.
Yes, strong men also cry. It is
Yeah.
okay to cry.
It's
And what we're
okay to
actually
cry.
getting here too is this the moon in Scorpio is
Right.
making this a grand water trine.
Yeah.
So it could be a very watery and emotional, maybe even
Mhm.
cathartic sort
Totally
of
cathartic.
time.
Totally cathartic. Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
maybe break out the waterproof mascara. Um,
Totally.
the first week of March there.
Uh-huh.
I don't wear any other kind myself. I'm a
Right?
crier.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think nope, the 10th, I guess, but I need to go in hours if I'm going to make it perfect. Then this is really the first sort of translation of light that we were talking about.
Mhm.
with Venus sweeping through here. So then
Hmm.
conjoining, we talked about she conjoined Neptune, then Saturn, and now she's going to sextile Pluto. So she is activating, and she also had sextile Uranus before
Yep.
she
Before
entered
she started doing all that. Yeah.
Aries. So she is now, as of March 10th anyway, she's going to have completed the, pinging off all these
Hmm.
outer planets.
Hmm. Hmm. And that translation of light for all those planets is either through sextile or bodily conjunction, right? Which are, for her, the two most powerful ways of
Mm,
connecting with planets. Yeah.
excellent point.
Yeah.
I'm again drawn to what the moon is doing on this day,
Hmm.
um, playing right into this, and again making this sort of trine and sextile combination
Hmm.
with now fire and air. So that
Hmm.
looks like more movement to me, more action. We have the two goddesses involved.
Hmm.
So it's coming from an emotional place.
Hmm.
And with Pluto, it's deep,
Yeah.
for certain. And I think collectively, maybe we see things about women during this time and about the
Oh,
power of the feminine, women
yeah.
and femmes in
Yeah.
general,
Yeah.
feminine folk, um, perhaps hopefully standing in their power.
Hmm.
But we may, Pluto is very good at showing us the shadow and the underbelly of everything too, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, there is, not to get into what's going on, but in the news there is a lot of stuff that's dealing with the power struggles between women and power in general. And, if I were to make like an aspiration for this moment, this would be a time for, women who are in power to really stand up and, express their positions on things that are going on in the world. So really, like it's not just men that are in power. There are a lot of really powerful women, and it would be
Hmm.
wonderful if their voices start surging really strongly out into the zeitgeist.
Hmm. Yeah, I think this could definitely be a time for that. I
Hopefully.
also think, on a personal level, on a more personal relationship level,
Mm.
if there have been cathartic emotional conversations, power struggles, perhaps this looks like, because of the favorability of the trine and sextile aspects, perhaps
Mm.
this looks like a bit of a rebalancing or trying to find some sort of equilibrium
Hmm.
um, in the power balance in relationships, in
Hmm.
personal relationships.
Hmm.
So potentially constructive for that.
Yeah,
I don't mind it at all.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Venus in Aries, like we said, she's in her detriment.
Mm.
But she's hot, right? We got to give her that. It's
Right.
it's very spicy.
She's very
Uh,
spicy in Aries.
and she does have this sort of mutual reception with Mars, even though they don't see each other. She's in Mars's domicile, he's in her exaltation.
Absolutely.
Um, so they're lending each other some support. She's not, especially as she moves away from Saturn, it'll be a little bit easier. She's not as banged up as she might be,
Well,
I guess.
yeah, and from a like when we think about like the yin and yang balance of things, right? I mean, this is a time when Mars is in, his morning phase in a feminine sign, and Venus is in her evening phase in a masculine sign. They're close to equidistant from the sun. So this is a time for that masculine
Right.
feminine balance where the yin is inside the yang is inside the yin, and together they're working to bring about, a real different kind of balance and harmony that's maybe a little bit out of sync with what we might think of those archetypes naturally being expressed in our world, in our lives. But the opposite nature of that is some sort of balance that's taking place.
I love that. That's a really beautiful way to think about it, is the yang inside the yin and the yin inside the yang.
Hmm.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, Venus right here is 15 degrees away from the sun. Mars is 14.
Hmm.
So they're both, and Venus is moving faster than the sun right now, and the sun, of
Hmm.
course, is moving faster than
Hmm.
Mars. So they're both becoming
Yeah.
visible
Right.
at the same time in the sky.
Right.
Mars in the morning, Venus in the evening.
Right.
So if
Very
you want to
lady
see
hot.
Venus, stay up until the
Right.
sun goes down, and then you can
Yeah.
potentially see her around this time.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
really, it's a very potent period of
Totally
time.
potent. Very potent. Yeah.
And I think as these, we had the Venus, Mars, Sun really sort of triple conjunction in Capricorn back in January.
Mm-hmm.
So if people want to think about their personal lives, if they got some hints at what seeds were being planted, that was late January, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Think back to that time.
Right.
If you were doing things, if you're aware of the Capricorn portion of your chart and you
Mm-hmm.
think what was going on, what was I doing in that Capricorn portion of my chart, that may all be becoming visible
Yes.
during this time,
Yeah.
or at least starting to.
Starting to. Yeah. Yeah. Because they were all hidden at that point, and now they're all starting to become visible.
Right, right.
Right.
They're under the beams of the sun, so you can't see them. They can't shine
Mm-hmm.
under the power of their own
Mm-hmm.
light.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they become visible,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, we get glimpses of that here on Earth.
Yeah.
So super beautiful time. The other thing that I love about this time, I think it just sort of accentuates what's going on here, is Jupiter is stationing direct, of course, on March 10th,
Mm-hmm.
after spending about a third of the year retrograde turned inward.
Yep.
I think Jupiter, when he first went into Cancer, well,
Mm-hmm.
Cancer was pretty tore up at the time, right? Because we had that Mars retrograde
Yeah.
in Cancer.
Totally.
um, at the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jupiter went in there and did bring a bit of a salve. I certainly felt that way
Mm.
to that Cancer portion of our chart. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we were still pretty acutely aware of the emotional pain and wounding
Absolutely.
that was
Absolutely.
still there. And I felt like
Yeah.
this square, because last summer he was really facing a square to Saturn because he was at the beginning of Cancer and Saturn had just
Mm-hmm.
dipped into Aries here. So there was this
Mm-hmm.
square of tension between them. And I felt like we didn't get 100% really of what
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter had to offer because of that tension. We're still going to have the
Totally.
sign-based square going on, but with Jupiter further into the sign, than Saturn is, I feel
Yeah.
that's a bit alleviated here.
Well, I think, yeah, and I think that from the story arc of Jupiter within a sign, because Jupiter is in a sign for about a year, right? Give
Mhm.
or take, because it's roughly 12 years to get through the whole zodiac. So some signs are a little bit longer than others, but roughly a year per sign. And so from the story arc of Jupiter being in the sign, it's like now, halfway through the sign is kind of like getting closer because especially as it gets to that half, things are going to start accelerating. He's going to start moving through Cancer a little bit faster. It's kind of like we're getting to the climax of the story. The book is kind of coming towards an end, and all the trouble in the beginning of the story, where the antagonist and the protagonist are kind of like fighting and working stuff out in their storylines, is coming to a point, and there's going to be some resolution, and things are going to start getting a little bit more easeful, and there's going to be a little bit more flow in the latter half. And I think that kind of like represents the kind of like the general story arc of Jupiter in a sign. The first half is like he's like trying to figure out how to build what he's going to be bringing to people, within the last part of the sign that he's going to be occupying. And I think we're going to be seeing that here as well between now and what is it, the end of June when he
Hmm.
shifts again, right? Yeah. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I think very, very end of June,
mhm,
almost July,
almost July.
when he'll go into Leo. And of course, we don't need to go there now, but it will be much more constructive because then he'll start trining Saturn
Hmm. Yep.
instead of squaring,
Yep.
which will be much easier to build. I feel like with
Hmm.
Jupiter in Cancer, of course, he's in his exaltation. It's the moon sign.
Hmm.
It's It's emotional. It's
Mm,
about emotional wisdom, emotional
mhm,
capacity,
mhm,
expanding our capacity for things like compassion, empathy,
mm, mhm,
caretaking, family,
mhm,
perhaps expanding our definition of family. Maybe
mhm.
family ceases to be about a nuclear unit and more about a community or
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
human race.
We're definitely moving into the part of our human experience where, especially in Western cultures, but even in Eastern cultures where birth rates are much lower, everywhere where birth rates are lower, we're seeing chosen family becoming a stronger theme. And how do we choose the people that we feel the strongest about and are the safest with? And how do we, in the process of choosing, how do we like concretize that? How do we make it official? Because sometimes those relationships are a little bit more watery and nebulous. And I mean, we've seen with, before, gay marriage became acceptable, and officialized, those were contracts that were difficult to officialize in, like hospital settings. And we're seeing that in the same movements with like polyamory and different kinds of chosen family structures that are outside the what, the norm of what's going on. But when we have these, when we don't have large families, as much anymore, it's important for us as humans to be part of a family and to be part of a community. And yeah, absolutely, this is about how do we structure those connections in a way that allows their, you know, autonomous, fluid nature, but still respects the fact that we are choosing each other in some way.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think that's a really beautiful way to think about it and really wise words. I
Mm,
think, yeah, to sort of weave in like the tension that we felt at the beginning of this cycle where Jupiter comes into Cancer and he's asking us to open to
mm,
vulnerability, to
mhm,
support,
mhm.
um, to sharing emotionally with other people. And we're all after that Mars retrograde. It's like, no, I'm not ready for that. And there's been
Mhm.
a lot of tension and like sort of the push-pull of this square, growing pains. And perhaps with Jupiter stationing direct here, perhaps we're a bit more ready for it than we were at the beginning of this cycle. I guess that's my hope.
Yeah, I think we are. It might take us a little bit of time to recognize how ready we are, but I think that we are ready for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very shortly after that, actually on March
Hmm.
13th, but we can see it applying here, Mars is going to conjoin Rahu, the north node of the moon.
Yay.
Yeah. So that should be interesting. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think, Rahu is so powerful and so potent that I think that with Mars coming into contact there, it's a time of real empowerment. Especially, with Jupiter looking on by trine and in the sign of Jupiter. Yeah, I think that's a real potent time for us to, think about our desires and what we're going to do with those desires to actually take action and start working towards things. It's just really highlighting all the themes we talked about, cutting through the emotional ambiguity and the illusions that we have in order to be able to see more deeply into what's going on for each of us. And this is a time for real deep healing. Mars is the planet that signifies the surgeon, right? And
Mhm.
so it's a time for us to really kind of in some ways operate on ourselves and use that Mars medicine power to like really get after the things that have been holding us back, and Pisces is a really baptismal kind of sign. And this is a time when the Mars is kind of like, entering those waters and figuring out how to, get at the deep inner parts of our traumas and, our past. And, how do we, cut through all that and like find a way to start moving forward. And that moving forward is what you're seeing imminently with all the sun and everything. They're going to be moving into Aries eventually. So it's like, this is kind of like the preparatory ablutions and all of that kind of washing and
Hmm.
cleaning away. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think about, Rahu, the nodes are complicated. They cast shadows wherever they go, right? That's what Austin Coppock would tell us. And Rahu is, he can be a hungry ghost. He's a body with or a head without a body, right?
Mm,
So he's
mm-hmm,
never satiated. Gobble, gobble, gobble,
mm-hmm,
is sort of all he can do. So there
mm-hmm,
always is that sort of hazard with Rahu that it can be a bit egoic,
mm-hmm,
in the head, out of the body. Um, so I always have to like sort of predicate that sort of caution. But I think here when we consider what else we have going on in the chart, um, I agree. I think this can be gaining emotional courage,
mm,
gearing up for action. There's
mm-hmm,
still some confusion, definitely, with
mm,
Mercury here,
mm-hmm,
in Pisces, but sometimes we have to act without perfect clarity.
mm,
Um, and we may be becoming sort of convinced that that is what we need to do, and move forward based on emotional wisdom,
totally.
versus perfect clarity.
Mm-hmm,
But yeah, I agree. We're getting into like the time to sort of take action,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's the ascending node, right? So the planets are leaping up across the ecliptic plane at that point, right?
Right. And like the nature of the nodes, I feel like this may be a time where we feel like there's no turning back. This
Mm,
is perhaps the point of no return.
mm-hmm,
Um, Going, yeah, and perhaps it's because we've grown emotionally or because we've
mm,
expanded in our emotional maturity, emotional wisdom. We simply aren't the people that we were like last year. And
mm,
so there isn't any going back in that way because there's no unknowing
right.
something or other. It's going to be a bit different for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a really potent and interesting time
It is for
for
sure.
sure. But our next aspect in the sky really isn't for a few days, and then that's going to bring us to the Pisces new moon. We have Mercury conjoining Rahu
Mm-hmm.
here really at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we also have Venus squaring Jupiter
Look at
at the
that.
same time.
Yeah.
This is all March 18th.
Mm-hmm. Right
And the
before the
new
sun moves
moon,
into Aries. Yeah.
yeah, the new moon is sextile Uranus too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nothing standing out specifically around that. I mean, they're fascinating configurations, but I don't, nothing's like right popping into my head about it, but I do
Yeah.
think like the new moon right on the edge of the equinox is a powerful statement. And, like you mentioned, Pisces is the exaltation of Venus. And in a way, like Venus, um, even though she's in her evening star phase, is kind of like heralding this the entrance of the sun into Aries across this point. So yeah, I kind of like we can kind of like see like she's kind of like paved the way with all this translation of light that she's been doing. She's like been she cut through the water. She's moved into Aries. She's like really just working to, clear the path to let the sun move into Aries. So it'll be interesting what the sun represents for all of us in our own individual charts
Hmm.
is going to be very um uh initiatory. Like it's going to be really kind of like this taking action and initiative to, move forward in all the areas. So like, like your Aries rising, right?
No, I'm Libra rising.
No. Oh, Libra rising. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Why did I say Aries rising? But
Yeah, this is
whatever
my
rising sign.
descendant.
So you're gonna be in your, yeah, you're gonna be in the other side of
I'll
things,
get
right?
hit. I'll get hit on it by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, either
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, you get hit on it either way. But yeah, wherever the sun is, it's gonna be moving in. What kind of what are we taking action in there? What are we initiating and starting? And Venus, representing like passion and desire and the things that we want is kind of like, yeah, just how do we connect with our desires, our passions, what we really want, and to kind of cut through the watery, illusionary kinds of things to let the sun move into those parts of our lives.
Yeah. I think that this is, like you said, it's a pause before the equinox. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, the new moon is a dark time.
Mm-hmm.
So potentially a time to rest, plant seeds in the dark is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking of. Like it's like planting emotional seeds in the
Mm-hmm.
dark that
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, so it really, like you said, it sort of blends in with everything we've been talking about,
Yeah.
as far as this sort of emotional preparation for action.
Mm-hmm.
And with the Venus square Jupiter, perhaps we are being tested or testing ourselves in emotional capacity.
Mm-hmm.
There is some tension between, like you said, desire, um,
Mm-hmm.
and emotional capacity.
Yeah.
So it's like we're still, again, trying to figure out if what we're going for here is really doable or not. Neptune's going to bring the faith, though.
Mm. Yeah.
And with the new moon sextile Uranus, of course, once again, we're sort of out of the box. We're thinking about taking risks, emotional risks, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that Mars is, so at the same time that Venus is squaring Jupiter, the trine of Mars to Jupiter, even though Venus and Mars, can't really see each other per se, that kind of like connection, would we call that a collection of light? I mean, you're such a horary master. Are we seeing a collection of light go on there? What?
Yeah, probably. Let's go forward a bit and see. I'm just wondering if it's prohibited by
Yeah.
anything. It's not. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would definitely call that a collection of light. And it's really interesting. Like we said, both Venus, and Mars have some mutual reception. Mars is, of course, in Jupiter's sign, though Jupiter is in Mars's fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jupiter and the moon actually have mutual reception too.
Mm.
So I
Yeah, so
do.
it's
I
like,
think that this is potentially really supportive of
yeah,
emotional growth, though it may
yeah.
feel prickly.
It may feel prickly, but it's really about how do we how do we take action on our passion? Like how do we bring the things that we desire and we're passionate about, and Mars is that action, and how do we bring that action into the world?
Hmm.
And with Jupiter there to like collect all of that, maybe he'll
Hmm.
throw it out into the world for us and bring it all home.
You might, or like at least help us find the emotional support and the people around us to
Mm.
bolster our courage in
Mm-hmm.
order to take emotional risk.
Mm-hmm.
It might not feel comfortable, but I think there's a lot in 2026 in general about choosing courage over comfort
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
I think we're all being asked to do that in one way or another. And so I'm just throwing it out there. I encourage everybody. Like if you feel like you're called towards something and it's outside of your comfort zone, you're not wrong. You're being called to do that thing.
Right. Right.
You probably are. If it feels right, then it very well may be.
Yeah.
And be willing to take some risks,
Yeah.
especially emotional ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a time for growth. It's a time for emotional growth. That's what Jupiter in Cancer has been telling us. Like you are held by the
Mm-hmm.
universe. You
Mm-hmm.
are safe. You are guided.
Yeah.
Um, be courageous. Yeah,
Even
beautiful.
when you can't see it.
Right. Even when you can't see quite where you're going yet, even
Yeah.
when you don't yet have the blueprint.
Right.
Yes, let's move forward to March 20th. And here we find ourselves at the spring equinox. We also have Mercury stationing direct at 8 Pisces the same day.
Mhm.
And we're very close to the approaching Mars-Jupiter trine, which we mentioned previously.
Yes.
So really all sort of happening one on top of one another. And of course,
Mhm.
in then the next couple of days, March 22nd, the sun is going to conjoin Neptune. And
Mhm.
then by the 25th, he will, that's the 23rd.
Well, the 23rd is the Mercury Rahu. That was,
Yep.
yep.
We have Mercury, Rahu. Don't let me skip that. And then the 25th, the sun conjoins Saturn and sextiles Pluto
Mm-hmm.
the same day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. And then the moon is down here
With Jupiter.
with Jupiter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, I mean, with the sun's story making this translation
Mm-hmm.
from Neptune to Saturn, and then connecting with Pluto,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see even more like sort of what this is for us in our personal lives,
Mm-hmm.
what the Saturn Neptune conjunction and its general sextile to Pluto is sort of brewing or trying to bring about, trying to get us to
Mm.
take. I feel like it's almost like goading us into action.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. And action around things that our ideals, right? Action around,
Mm.
what our larger belief systems. You know, I can't remember, it was like a podcast or YouTube or something, but it was like talking about this study of, um, like how like the media affects our initiative and our action. And I think it was, they were talking about different polls and things like that. And what it was saying is they discovered that, um, people who don't watch as much news or TV, or aren't as, acclimatized to situations, are much more likely to vote, to take action, to do things that cause change. And from an emotional standpoint, that watching the news and feeling outrage about a situation stimulates the same parts of our brain that otherwise would have caused us to take action. And so, in a way, it's kind of like we can put ourselves to sleep by being too enmeshed in the stuff, right? And that if we find a way to step back away from that a little bit, it will actually help us to have the emotional capacity to actually take action on the things that we believe. It's just that psychologically, if we become enraged by the things that we're seeing in the news, often that enragement enough is satisfying, and
Mm.
we don't actually have to do anything in order to feel the satisfaction. We feel like our anger is enough to cause the change, and it's not actually. We do,
Right.
need to take action to make change. And if we're not taking action towards the things that we have ideals, our own ideals, and what we want to be the world to be shaped of, if we're not taking action, somebody else is, you know.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
That like your nervous system perhaps mistakes the outrage
Right?
for taking
Release.
actual action.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the
Hmm.
release of it.
Hmm.
That's really interesting to think about. I mean, I think you're 100% right about the ideals. You know, Pisces can be a quite
Hmm.
idealistic sign, and with this beautiful trine
Hmm.
to Jupiter, its
Hmm.
ruler. And
Hmm.
then Neptune in Aries, I think at its best is most definitely an inspired vision and
Hmm.
faith in
Yeah.
that, faith in
Right.
our ability to bring it about,
Hmm.
especially. perhaps especially collectively, but in our individual lives too. And Saturn in Aries is definitely asking for personal accountability,
Mm. Just a little
individuation.
plug about that. What that made me think about is I also have a podcast with a couple other nightlighters called Faith Meets Fate, and it made
Yes.
me think of the Neptune Saturn was faith meeting fate, right? In a
Yeah.
way, right? The faith side being Neptune and the fate side being Saturn or
When did you
Trine.
guys start that? Was that, I've caught a couple episodes. Was that just this year?
Yeah, so we started meeting in the fall and then we started planning, but then we recorded and put out our first thing, I think in December. And so we've had a few
Mm.
episodes since then. But yeah, that's at faithmeetsfate.com, also the YouTube channel of the same name. Yeah, just
Yeah.
exploring,
Yes,
the
thank you. Check that out
yeah.
because you guys are talking about, yeah, the intersection of weren't you all raised in the LDS
That's
faith?
right. We're all raised Mormon. That's right.
And then
And
now you're astrologers and talking
we're
about
all
like
astrologers and yeah,
where
yeah.
that meets.
Yeah, and we've all had different faith paths within and without and interweaving Mormonness or, other faith traditions. I'm a practicing Buddhist now for 30 some odd years.
Hmm.
So, and they all have their own different trajectories as well. So, yeah, it's just kind of like exploring that intersectionality of faith and fate and
Hmm.
how both of those two things weave in our lives. And a lot of people, I think, connect to those concepts and struggle with, rationalizing or, uncovering one to help the other or vice versa, so yeah, it's
Hmm.
fun. We just kind of get around and talk astro talk and Mormon talk and reminisce about things. And yeah, we have a lot of like set topics, so we'll record a topic and record that, but then we also have just like a lot of banter that we put as kind of like what we call outtakes that are just kind of like more of us chatting about stuff, which some people find interesting. Some of the topics are pretty interesting. So anyways,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
Anyways,
I
just
found it very
a plug.
interesting,
Yeah.
the couple of episodes that I've caught so far. So yeah, people should check that out. But yeah, Saturn, Neptune, yeah, faith and fate. I love that.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think it's worth noting too, that the sun is exalted here in Aries.
Mm,
So he's
absolutely.
bringing a lot more dignity and
Mm-hmm.
um, sort of authority to the
Hmm.
situation.
Hmm.
Aries is it is a rather personal sign, right? It's cardinal fire.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of spring. As we said, it's
Yeah.
spring equinox. The
Right.
sun is on its way then to the summer solstice, where it will be the longest day of the year. So
Hmm.
the day is becoming longer than the night. We are moving
Hmm.
from the dark into the light.
Hmm.
So those are a lot of things for us to think about. I think if we were planting seeds in the dark under the Pisces new moon, this is the first quarter too. We're at the
Hmm.
opening square of the moon
Hmm.
to the sun. So that's our quarter moon mark.
Hmm.
And this is a point of tension. So it's kind of like,
Mm.
okay, well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do with those seeds? Are they
Right.
bursting through the soil? Like what happens
Yeah.
in the spring? And um, yeah, Aries, the ram, like this burst of action, right? When you
Mm.
watch the rams butt heads, they don't like run at each other,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
They basically stand there and then just burst at each other, which
Right.
is very interesting. And I always think of that as Aries. It's like it's got this like
Mm.
bursting sort
That's a
of
powerful image.
quality.
Yeah, I love that.
So I think there could be a lot of that going on. Venus here again, still in her detriment, but getting towards the end of the sign,
Hmm.
potentially making it a bit more relational than it might otherwise be.
Mm.
So it could be about such things. Maybe I just think that because it's my seventh house too, but Venus is my
Yeah.
ruler.
Yeah.
But she's, trying to contribute some sweetness, perhaps some gentleness, reminding us of why we're
Yeah.
acting.
Yeah. And this is really, her being in Aries, thinking about initiation and her coming out from under the beams now, right? This is the start of a long, process over this summer where we will see her elongate further and further. And then towards the beginning of fall, she'll be at her greatest elongation, right? Where she will be fully like regal and in the sky, powerful and bright in the evening after the sun sets. And after the sun sets, she will still be in the sky for a long time before she finally sets. And she will just have this like enormous, enormous power. I mean, I just the summertime evening star phenomenon for Venus is so powerful. And this right now is when it's starting. This is the moment. Like Venus is out from under the beams. She's in Aries. She's about to move into Taurus, her own domicile. So it's really, this is really a story about Venus. And then when she's in Libra, I think it is when she's in Libra is when she reaches that maximum elongation. So it's like this is her story arc for this year for sure.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
really interesting to see her at the head too of the faster moving planets.
Mm-hmm.
So she's sort of heralding the way.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
really is the sort of yang within the yin because the evening
Mm-hmm.
star phase is more yin, but here in
Right.
Aries, she is a bit of a warrior queen.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Powerful.
Definitely inspiring and
Mm-hmm.
driving action, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about like why do we ever act on anything? It's out of desire or
Mm-hmm.
attraction,
Mm-hmm.
magnetism,
Mm-hmm.
to get that thing that we want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Venus's function.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And with,
And
yeah,
she's
Mercury.
maintaining this Mars relationship, right? She's still, as we keep going through the month, she's still maintaining this Mars relationship where they're equidistant kind of from the sun.
Hmm. They're still equidistant. They still have this mutual reception,
Mm-hmm.
going on, yes, between desire and action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm.
And then with Mercury, yeah, so he's now direct,
Mm.
hasn't moved too much since he's stationed. He's stationed at
Right.
8. He's now at 9.
Mm.
But yeah, he conjoined Rahu on the
Yep.
23rd,
Yes, he did.
really right after he's stationed.
Mm-hmm.
Almost stations conjunct Rahu,
Yep.
which is interesting. There are different schools of thought on this with planets conjunct the node and like which are more functional. I know one school of thought is that Mercury is the most sort of functional when
Mm.
conjunct specifically the North Node.
Mm.
And I think that's because an insatiable curiosity is hardly ever a bad thing, right?
Mm.
That's
Mm.
one thing that you can get insatiable about and probably not hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You might lock yourself up reading too many books and never see the light of day or something, but like that's probably the greatest risk for
Mm.
that. But it does, I think, also look pretty idealistic, um, in a way.
Yeah.
So maybe we're getting a real vision. Um,
Well,
Again,
I think it's,
probably rather
like Mercury
emotional.
and Pisces. Yeah, Mercury and Pisces for me is like, when the power of Mercury moves into metaphor, right? It's no
Mhm.
longer the crystal clear, sharp analysis of things. And it's not that Mercury stops talking to us. It's that now Mercury's talking in riddles and metaphor and simile and allegory. And we have to like try to understand the messages from Mercury in a little bit more abstract way, right? And that can be
Mhm.
difficult for us if we're used to our mercurial qualities coming through sharply analytical, but this is a time to, if you're used to, writing prose, maybe it's time to write poetry. If you're, used to, building something solid, maybe it's time to like do something a little bit more, organic, or the creative side of movement and motion that, lets Mercury speak through, things that are quite ambiguous, and ambiguous in the true sense of ambi, meaning two, and Pisces is a double-bodied sign. So it's very ambiguous. But there's a power to ambiguity in a way where if we stop trying to focus on it and just let us kind of like wash over us, there's an experience, it's like watching a movie where there's, double entendre inside the movie, and we kind of have to watch it twice in order to actually get both of the messages that are coming out of it. It's like that with Mercury.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful imagery. I like that very much.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, with Mercury and Mars both still in Pisces, you're right. There's ambiguity and there's surrender to it.
Hmm.
Once again, I think we're looking at action before clarity,
Mm-hmm.
which might not be ideal, but that is sometimes what life requires. We have to sort of feel into it, metaphor, intuition, use your sonar. At least with
Yeah.
Mercury direct, he's a bit more functional here. And I do love that, he's been trining his ruler Jupiter
Mm-hmm.
basically the whole time. It's a bit more supportive than it otherwise might be.
Mm. Yep. What you just said there reminded me of another study I was reading or listening to that talks about the idea that before we make a decision, the decision is already made. Like in our body, before our mind knows the decision, our body knows it. And
Yeah.
so we often think that, oh, I've made a decision and, I'm making a choice, but the choice was actually made on the cellular level of our bodies before it turned into a thought that,
Yes. Yes, I've
you
done
know,
research about this too, about like the time that it takes for like the command from your
mm,
brain to get to your
mm-hmm,
hand, and
mm-hmm,
actually you already did it.
right,
So, did you actually decide to do it and then do it, or was it
right.
the other way around? Right.
Right. And
Right.
you can sit there and think to your hand, move, move, move all you want consciously, and it stays put, but then you move it and it just moves, right?
Right. So yeah, Mercury, Mars, and Pisces here. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're wherever, but it's in the 12th from Aries anyway,
Mm.
wherever it is in your personal chart. So it is sort of like hidden,
Hmm.
from this other business that's going on. So that's really
Hmm.
interesting to think about. You may see things like sort of coming out of liminal spaces, um,
Yeah.
or going back in, finding, I wonder about like experiencing motivations too and drivers for action that you're unaware of. So
Mm.
it is a good time to like really sort of feel into like, why do I want this? Why am I
Yeah.
why do I feel this impulse to do this thing, or
Right.
um and to sort
Like
of sit with that.
in a
But
way, these signs, Pisces and Aries, are talking about the hidden and the visible in different ways, because
mhm.
Pisces, if we look at the glyph of Pisces, right? The glyph of Pisces represents the horizon, the line. When we're not using the fish as the symbol, like the symbol that you see on the screen there is representing the horizon with that line, right? And then the hourglass shape is an abstract representation of the stars as they circle
Mm.
across the ascendant point. And so, uh, what Pisces is showing you is that if you were to take the Earth away and look at the horizon, you would be able to see both sides of that, right? And so, in a way, it's talking about making the hidden visible. Whereas in Aries, the reason we have that glyph like this is not, I mean, it is the ram's horns, but it also is the same motion, but with the horizon in place, right? So we no longer see what's hidden with Aries. We only see the visible. And so it's kind of like in Aries, even though it's so bright and initiatory, it's almost in kind of like has a quality like a planet being under the beams, where there's something because of the brightness and this everything is so obvious. There's also things that are hidden. Whereas in Pisces, it's like, oh, let the darkness reveal to us what is hidden, so that we can actually see what's below the horizon.
Mm, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. I also always think of a little sprout coming out of the ground too when
right.
I look at
Totally.
the Aries glyph too,
Yeah. Yeah.
springtime.
It is like a little sprout.
So perhaps that's like, like what we said, we're starting to see during this time is, some of this sort of inner work,
Mm,
this emotional labor coming to greater fruition in the outside world. And then this Sun sextile Pluto, I think, is going to be quite powerful.
mm,
Um, and I think that may bring us into the collective too, with our own
mhm,
personal purpose,
mhm.
and integrating it with community, um,
Yeah.
encountering power struggles. But the sextile is a very functional aspect, can be,
Hmm.
when
Absolutely.
it's used appropriately. So, Yeah, I don't dislike that at all. I think it potentially lends some power and gas. And once
Mm.
again, I think we're going to learn a lot about what Saturn Neptune may. We're going to start learning anyway about what it may
Yeah.
have in store for us over the next several decades, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, let's see what else. We don't have too much left for the month. Like the very most exciting thing, I feel like this is one of the biggest
Mhm.
aspects of the entire
Mhm.
month, right here at the
Mhm.
very end, is
Mm.
we get this exact hit of the
Mhm.
Saturn Pluto sextile.
Mm. Mhm.
What do you think about that, Ryan? I think it's the only.
Move it so it's not quite so exact. Move it back a couple of hours. Let's move that moon right opposite Pluto. What happens there?
Let me do this.
Yeah, right in here. Oh, not quite, a little bit.
Too far.
So there we are. So yeah, still partile. So it's only a few minutes off. So that is a strong, that's strong right there. Like that's a moment where the moon is opposite Pluto with the sextile, just moments away from application by Saturn.
Hmm.
Yeah. The moon is applying to both of them. Saturn is applying to Pluto, and the moon is applying to both Saturn and Pluto.
Hmm.
That's a powerful opponent right there.
It is. And maybe I should mention for my listeners, like we've mentioned what the moon's doing several times through the month. When the moon hits other aspects that are happening in the sky like this. It's so often that you see this in astrology where you're like, well, of course the moon's right there when this is happening. But it's like
Right?
we feel it. When the
Yeah.
moon is aspecting it, it brings it sort of down into the earthly plane and into the body,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
Into the material world. That's what the moon
Mhm. Mhm.
does. It's just,
Mhm.
about material manifestation. So, yeah, this is going to be it's the 27th, and then the exact hit,
Mhm.
um, the partile hit is the 28th.
Because
It's
the moon, from a physical standpoint, the moon's lunar disk is about a half a degree across, depending upon how close to the Earth she is. It can fluctuate between 28 arc minutes to 32 arc minutes, which is a half a degree. So if you think about it, she's making these aspects over a half a degree as she's moving. So we're seeing her connection with Pluto and Saturn is actually encompassed within her lunar disk, the geometric area of her lunar disk,
mhm,
because it all happens within 30 arc minutes, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So even though, yeah, the exact aspect is the 28th, but I mean, we've been feeling this building since
Hmm.
Saturn entered Aries for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm.
But this is a powerful exact hit. And of course, the moon is translating because she, you know, already pinged Neptune,
Hmm.
and then now she's pinging Saturn, Pluto,
Yeah.
and then the sun as she's
Yes.
sweeping through here.
Yeah.
So it's just really pulling it all together.
When I do my lunation videos on my channel, which because of all the teaching and stuff that I've been doing, I've been a little bit lacking on. But when I do my lunation videos, either full moon or new moon, that's one of the things I do is I talk about less as much about the aspects that are going on and more about the journey that the moon has taken over the last 2 weeks and her next 2 weeks and how she's connected, especially when she has bodily connections with other planets and how that brings into the accumulation and dissemination of light. So yeah, I love kind of like narrating the moon as a journey that we're all going on every single
Hmm.
month.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And she's in her waxing gibbous phase here with
Hmm.
the opening trine.
Hmm.
So really coming to fruition, right?
Absolutely.
Perfection is what that
Yeah.
waxing gibbous phase is about. If the square is more about the tension of building, then
Hmm.
the gibbous is more about refining
Yep.
towards
And again,
perfection.
when that gibbous, when it hits the trine, it's activating that Jupiterian quality of, our deep inner teacher. The teacher quality is being activated by that Jupiterian aspect. So that's going to be happening between Aries and Leo. It's going to be a fire trine Jupiterian teaching moment for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, once again, I think we're being goaded into action too. Like
Mm,
if we have
mhm.
not started actual work towards these ideals, towards these plans, towards these things that we've decided we wanted, um, we're probably going to be, it's going to be demanded of us here pretty soon, I think.
It's going to be totally demanded. And in my class on Mars in that Cosmic Catalysts, again, which people can purchase at Synchronicity University, one of the things that I pointed out is because Mars is in direct motion the whole year long, it's really important for us to consciously build in our own resting periods, because if we don't
Mm.
proactively find ways to stop and rest for a moment, the entire energy of the year can push us forward into almost near exhaustion by the time the end of the year comes around. So we do have to pace ourselves through this year because it's a young fire horse year. Mars is in direct motion the whole year. We have all these fire elements that are coming here at the beginning of the equinox. We have to really make sure that we pace ourselves over the next 12 months for sure.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
Exhaustion and burnout can be a real risk this year. I can sort of feel it in myself already.
Right?
It's
Absolutely.
like slow down, Aaron. But yeah, I think the Saturn Pluto sextile in general, I made a few notes about it. So it's the only exact sextile between Saturn and Aries and Pluto and Aquarius during this cycle. So while Saturn is in Aries this time,
Mm-hmm.
um, the last Saturn Pluto sextile was in 2013, and the next one is in 2047. So that gives you an idea of how sort of rare they
2013
are.
was also there was also a Uranus Pluto connection in 2013, wasn't there?
Um,
Here, just
Uranus would have been in Aries and Pluto was in Capricorn. So yeah, maybe
it was
square.
the here, let me I think it was the square, right? I was just doing some research on that too, because of some of the stuff that Richard Tarnas was talking about. I'm
Mm.
gonna just look at it. Yeah, the Uranus Pluto square Aries Capricorn. Yeah, just dealing with some of the, trying to look at, what's going on in our current moment. We've seen through all the news and stuff, and how that anchors back into that Uranus Pluto square. So
Hmm.
it's interesting. I hadn't thought about the Saturn part of that as well, but I
Hmm.
think I think that's a powerful connection to think about the Saturn's involvement back in 2013. Yeah.
Hmm. So perhaps
Wow.
think about what you were doing and maybe especially about the Aries portion of your chart because that's where Uranus was too,
Right.
back in 2013.
Yep.
So what's going
Yeah.
on with that Aries portion of our chart?
Hmm.
That's kind of the question.
10 degrees is where I'm just looking at on my chart on my software. Uh, Pluto is at 11:58. So I mean, 10:58. So yeah, kind of like that at the end of the first, into the second decan. The second decan of Aries is where a lot of that activation was taking place. So that'll be interesting to pay attention to. Yeah.
So more where Venus is now. Or
Hmm.
no, the second decan you said,
Sun,
so
the
in the
sun is
middle.
moving into the second decan soon. Yeah.
Okay.
On that chart. Yeah.
That's very
Yeah.
interesting. But
Very
yeah, these
interesting.
big cycles between these outer planets, which we're
Hmm.
seeing a lot of in 2026,
Hmm.
are structural tone setting. These are
Hmm.
big structural changes around us,
Hmm.
which are often more collective than personal, but that doesn't mean it's not going to show up in your personal life also.
Yeah.
It very well could, especially if you have things, around 5 degrees.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we mentioned at the beginning. It shows up in the collective because we all make up the collective. So it's
Hmm.
it's going to show up in enough. When it shows up in the collective, it means it's showing up in enough people's personal lives to make it a collective experience.
Right. To
Yeah,
contribute to some sort of collective movement, even,
yeah, absolutely.
especially with the fire and air, like you said,
Yeah,
the fire horse year.
right.
There's a lot of movement this year.
A lot, a lot.
And then I think our very, really last planetary movement that I have on our list for the
Mm.
month of
Hmm.
March is Venus's ingress into her home domicile of
Hmm.
Taurus
Hmm.
on the 30th.
Hmm.
Uh, chef's kiss for the, for
Yes.
the end of the month.
And at that same moment is right after the moon has transited across the south node, right, opposite to Mercury. And so there's this, I think of like this is a
Where the eclipse
submerging
was.
moment. Yeah, where the
Yeah.
eclipse was. This is a submerging moment, right? The moon is entering into the lower hemisphere of her lunation
Hmm.
cycle, through her movement across the nodes, and it's a deep moment of submerging, entering a more womb-like experience for our, lunar qualities, and how do we go through cleaning, purification processes. And with the moon opposite Mercury, there's going to be a lot, still in Pisces, there's still going to be a lot of this need to let Mercury and the moon have a conversation with each other that brings us into a deeper reality of, as we talked about earlier, our sovereign nature, and how do we talk to ourselves, our inner dialogue. We have
Hmm.
voices that go on in our head talking to ourselves, and sometimes we're giving ourselves self-affirmation, and sometimes we're tearing ourselves down. This is a moment where Mercury and the moon kind of like have to sit opposite each other on those nodes and go like, let's just back off. No more inner voices for just a little while, and just accept how powerful we are. And that Venus moving into
Yep.
Taurus is the exact moment when that deep embodied sensuality can start coming to the fore, when those voices get silenced a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. She's going to invite us to get into our bodies,
Mhm.
and hopefully a bit out of our heads.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, because Virgo, it's a beautiful sign, but it can
Hmm.
be very critical, especially self-critical. I mean, it's my
Hmm.
12th house, and I have things there, so
Right.
I know this very
Right.
well. What does Adam's wife
Right.
Ashley call it? The itty bitty shitty committee, the voices in your
I
head
love that. The
that
itty
are
bitty
telling
shitty committee.
telling you all these lies potentially,
Right.
about how you're not good enough, or
Right.
yeah, et cetera, et cetera. Um,
Absolutely.
so perhaps this is an invitation to, you know, silence some of them or at least ignore
Totally.
them.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, the beginning of Venus's transit through Taurus is
Mm.
definitely more tense because of the applying square to Pluto.
Mm.
But once she gets past those 5 degrees,
Mm.
I think it will be more relaxing. So maybe this will become, well, maybe I shouldn't say that because then Mars will head into Aries. I was gonna say maybe this will become one of those times to sort of make time for breaks for yourself. But with
Yeah.
Mars into Aries, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, it'll be
I
interesting.
think anytime somebody feels like in their mind, is this a time I should take a break? It probably is.
The answer is probably
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This whole year, if you even think that it might be time to take a break, it already is overdue.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And now we're on April 1st, so I won't go any further. But yeah,
Right.
there could be, relational power dynamics that need to be
Mm.
examined here too. Or, if
Absolutely.
there's feelings of unworthiness in any
Mm.
sense,
Hmm.
again, that sort of ties together that piece of like sort of the mental chatter,
Yeah.
um, and this attention of like, power or looking at the underbelly of a thing,
Yeah. Well, it's going to
of
bring up the
Venusian
Barbie story,
topics.
right? The Barbie story, the underworld story, going into the underworld. That's the
Oh, yeah,
Venus
yeah.
Venus Pluto connection, right? Is this,
Hmm.
it's this is the story that's going on, and going into the underworld to receive your power and get it back and reclaim it somehow, right? I mean,
Hmm.
Austin and Chris did such a great job of covering that Barbie story on
The
the
Barbie
astrology
movie.
podcast, the Barbie movie, right, on their
Yeah.
podcast, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was during a Venus retrograde too, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And like when you think of the myth of Inanna,
Mm-hmm.
the goddess of the heavens, and her
Right.
trip to the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if anybody's not familiar with that myth, look it up. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful
that's wonderful.
story about,
Mhm.
yeah, about the divine feminine in the underworld,
And
basically, which
Venus
is
in the mornings, in the evening star phase, like she is in that underworld phase.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm
Hmm.
So I think without the Pluto, like it looks quite indulgent, relaxing, luxurious. And with
Mm.
the Pluto, it's like, um, perhaps at what cost? And,
Right.
this is the time to ask ourselves these questions. At what cost am I,
Mm.
indulging? Is this what's best for me? I mean, definitely we need rest, as you said, but maybe sugar is not what we need.
Yeah.
Maybe, um, scrolling is
This
not
is
what
kind
we
of like that
need.
moment where we start surrendering the seven accoutrements of our royal, uh, you know, expression, right? That's the Inanna myth, right? Going in and surrendering her seven royal emblems, right? And this is kind of
Right,
like that moment, right? The Pluto square.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, thinking about what you need to surrender for, to better respect your body, perhaps, and hold it as a
Hmm.
temple.
Hmm.
I think Venus is happy to do that in her
Hmm.
earthy domicile there.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think of the Queen of Pentacles with Venus in either the Venus or Moon in Taurus. I always think of Queen of Pentacles.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Beautiful imagery. Yeah, very
Yeah.
gestational, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Something potentially being born. So her trip through Taurus this year is not going to be what it sort of normally is, I would
Mm.
say.
Mm.
It's going to be a bit more exciting with that square to Pluto. And then, like we said, once she gets to the end, she's
Yeah.
going to be conjoining Uranus and walking
Yeah.
him over the line into
Walking
Gemini.
him over the line. Yeah.
So it's going to be more exciting, I think, and more sort of
Oh yeah.
turbulent.
Oh yeah.
We might also like look, collectively, I wonder
Mm.
about shifts in currency, finances, and things like this
Mm.
during this time and in the upcoming month. But that's April.
Absolutely.
But
Could be, that's very Plutonic and Venusian at the same time. Yeah,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
totally.
Pluto as ruler of the underworld, where all the rich stuff is.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. The ever-growing Plutarchy that we are all experiencing.
Mm-hmm,
Hmm.
for sure. So yeah, we'll see. But what do you think, Ryan? So I think we've made it to the end of the month.
We've made it to the end of the month and we survived.
We did. Now we just have to do it in real life.
What? You mean just walking through it in our minds, talking about it isn't enough? We actually have to
My
go
nervous
through
system thought it was.
Right?
My nervous system is convinced I already did it now. I can move on to
Right,
April.
exactly. No need to go through the next month. We already did it.
Right? Do you have
Yeah.
any closing words of wisdom for us?
Mm. Just to, feel deep within inside of ourselves, make sure that we take time to stay connected to the deeper inner parts of ourselves, not to get lost in the outer world. And, I think one of the most, wonderful parts of astrological philosophy is the hermetic correspondence connection of, as above, so below, as within, and so without, this kind of correspondence language that astrology has embedded within it so deeply. And that, it's good to pay attention to what's going on with the planets and the stars above in the sky. And that those planets and stars, the reason why we do this is that they're also within us, and they're like, in some ways, kind of like quantumly entangled, right? We don't, they're astrologically entangled. And so it's good to just like, if we, especially if we're getting anxiety about what's going on externally, to just like reconnect internally and to find ways to slow down and just kind of sit and be with who we are and what's going on internally. You know, anyways, yeah, that's it. Those are my
Yeah,
words of wisdom for the month.
I think that's excellent advice. Yeah, I mean, I guess to sort of summarize, I think it starts off much a story about sort of expansion of emotional capacity
Mm-hmm.
and vision
Mm-hmm.
and leading into action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this 1 month is not a complete story. The things that we're going to be starting to take action on, and potentially maybe already have, but are continuing to, or moving into a state of greater, more concerted effort on,
Mm.
are things that are going to be of consequence for potentially years to come.
Yeah.
But this year, And pace yourself. I think that's my number one advice, like you said,
Absolutely.
because Saturn demands stamina, right? He's about the long haul.
Right.
And here he's conflicted in Aries because Aries is about moving quickly. So I think we're going to feel like we need to move
Mm-hmm.
quickly,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to also move forward, with the end in mind as best we can with limited clarity. Um, but also be prepared to take breaks, lean on each other.
Mm-hmm.
If we're working together on something and I need a break, you can potentially keep going while I break, and then you can have a break when I
Mm-hmm.
pick up the baton again.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, these are the things that I think of for this month, and the entire time Saturn is going to be in Aries. I think endurance and stamina is going to be tested, and taking really good care of our bodies is going to be
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It will definitely represent a split between what we're feeling we want to do and what we actually have capacity for. And Saturn's going to get there, but it's going to move slowly. No matter how hard you push on Saturn, he's not going to move any faster than he does.
Right. And we should remember he's not going to leave Aries until 2028. So we have
Right.
this year and we have next year.
Yep.
So don't think it all has to be complete this year either.
Good Saturn and Aries times ahead.
Yes. Yes. All right, Ryan. Well, any parting words before we sign off?
That's it. Just thanks for having me. It's been wonderful to have this conversation and just really, it's been super rich and real.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining me and being my first guest on my
Yeah.
podcast.
Absolutely.
I appreciated it.
Yeah.
All right, and
Thank
this was a fun conversation to have too. We'll have to do it again.
We will for sure.
All right. Well,
Anytime.
that's all for now. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye. As we close out today's conversation, I want to leave you with this reminder. March is not asking us to have everything figured out. It's asking us to notice what's ending, what's beginning, and what feels real enough to engage with, even if the path forward is still taking shape. Eclipse season, paired with the spring equinox, marks a powerful turning point. Something is being released, something is being initiated, and much of what unfolds next will depend on how willing we are to meet uncertainty with presence rather than fear. As the faster moving planets enter Aries, we're learning what it means to act without a guarantee, to choose movement over stagnation, and to trust that clarity often follows commitment, not the other way around. If you find yourself wanting to go deeper with this astrology, I invite you to visit my website, astrologywitharin.com, where you'll find my lunar blog for each new and full moon. You can also book a consultation with me there if you'd like support navigating how these transits are unfolding in your own chart. As always, the link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today, and a heartfelt thank you again to Ryan for joining me for this conversation. I'll be back next month with your astrology forecast for April, when Uranus enters Gemini, making it one of the most exciting months of the year. I'll see you there. Until then, take good care, and may you trust the divine timing unfolding in your life.